That's how adults learn, is by making a mistake, jumping that hurdle and moving on. I have a young man that I work with, his name is Dale, and Dale, every time we open up a math book, says, ah, and we get to fractions, he says, ah, and then he says, oh, but fractions was the hardest thing I ever did in 9th grade algebra. I could never learn fractions. And then I remind him of a story he told me about when he went to the building trades house, and he was measuring and cutting trim for the house they were building, and his teacher charged him 25 cents every time he mismeasured and cut wrong. So from that mistake, he came back to the classroom and said, teach me how to add fractions. And because of that mistake and that little 25-cent fine, he was able to learn because there was a purpose for learning. But every time we come to math as an adult, now we have to go through that whole song and dance before he says, oh yeah, I know how to do fractions. So acknowledge their past experience, and the mistakes he made is what he learned from. Adult learning has to be purposefully driven, and they have to be ready to learn. There has to be a purpose, a reason internally for an adult to learn. They have to be ready to learn. I remember the poster I saw in an adult learning classroom, one of the first ones that I was in as a retired teacher. And he had a picture of a ladder on the wall. And the picture said, I can only push so high, but then you have to climb. And I thought that was awful, but it's very true. They have to be ready to learn. It has to be their decision, and they have to be purposefully driven. There has to be an intentional motivation. They have to be reaching towards something. I want to read a book to my grandkids. I want to get a high school diploma. I want to. There has to be intentional motivation. And the learning must be active. And that's what gets us into digital learning. Digital learning is not necessarily active unless you make it active. When adults consume digital literacy, digital information, it's not active. And what we're learning today is how to make it active. When adults read text, they don't read the whole text on the screen. They tend to skim, okay? They look at all those sidebars, all those things off to the side that might give them other information. They watch for highlighted links that will take them other places. Maybe they're the blue words in a text. Maybe they're just highlighted links in a text. But they look for those and they tend to follow those. They look for video links, something that will give them a video or a picture or a highlighted idea of what they're looking at. And many times they can even have that text read to them. Those are the 5 rules about consuming adult text that came from Pew, How Millennials Consume Content and How to Better Engage Them. And if you wanted to read something, that's a really good piece to read, written by Joyce Chow. And it gives you lots of information. That text is on the bottom of the screen, and we're recording that so you can get back to that. Okay, here we go. He taught me how to do this now, so I'm going to try. I'm going to do 1, 2. This is an adult teacher trying to learn to follow a link, and I did it. Aren't you proud? Oh, no, I didn't do it. Let me try one more time. I thought I did it. Sorry. Take me just 1 second.
I did see your internet.
It came up
for a minute.
It came up for a second, didn't it?
Yes. You can just, you don't have to talk.
I think I'm there.
You can just go, yeah. You can do it the way that you normally would. You can just minimize this
Okay.
and come back to it.
Okay, here we are. Okay, this is News for You, which is an excellent, excellent site for helping adults learn to read. Whether it's, no matter what the level of their reading, the articles are wonderful for them. They're good contemporary articles. Let's look at this one really quick, and then we'll go from there. And I'll tell you a little bit how to find this and where to get it. News for You is a weekly newspaper. There's a different article every day. This particular article is about Battle Over Masks is an all-American story. And you can see on the teacher's page, there's exercises, there's activities you can do, there's a teacher's guide for the whole week. There are full audio of this article if you want to do a full audio of the whole thing. We can see as we go down that there are sidebars here on the student's text. There's sidebar as well. I can click here and have the whole story read to me. I can change the size of the text for those folks who need different pieces of the text to look at. So there's lots of things for them to look at before they even get to the text. One of the nice parts about this text is I can have just a portion read to me rather than the whole thing. So if I don't know how to pronounce this name or the name of this town, I can click on that one sentence.
Max Parcell lives in Jacksonville, Florida.
And it will just read that one sentence to me. And then I can go on as a student and read, whether you're using do-a-log reading, whether they're reading aloud to you, no matter how it is they're reading, that read along of one sentence at a time when they come to a word they don't know truly helps them. By listening to the whole story read to them, they can hear fluency. They can hear how other people read. They can hear pauses. They can hear inflection when you have a question. They can hear all those pieces that make them more fluent at what they're doing. You can see here's one of those highlighted words that I can go over, and it'll tell me that in this case, forcing is making someone to do something they don't want to do, but it'll give me that definition. So all of those pieces that we talked about, a student needing when they read text, are all built into this model. A role model, a person whom others want to be like, okay? So it's all there. There's a vocabulary list of words they may need to know for this week, for all the newspaper articles for this week. You can see that this week there was one article about Major League Baseball. There's another one about rescuing from a wildfire, what fish do in the Colorado Creek after they're rescued after a wildfire. Young people in Bolivia adopt grandparents during the virus. Stuck in Paradise, Sri Lankan cafe owner helps stranded tourists. And one about NASA. The last one for this week was about small underwater creatures. So you can go to any of those articles and find you have the same access as you do this one that I showed you. Sidebar reading, text, read aloud, ability to skim that text instead of read the entire text. Here's that, what about small underwater creatures? Build large snot palaces. Boy, men like to read this kind of articles. I'm not sure why, but my adult men love this kind of article. My adult men would have to have this first line read to them, so we'd just do that. Takes it a minute to get there.
The giant larvation is a master builder.
Larvation. See, I would not have known to pronounce that larvation. I would have probably called it larvison, but larvation. Let's listen to that again.
The giant larvation is a master builder.
And it's really important as you're reading with adults to make sure that you acknowledge there are some things that you would not have pronounced the way they had. Read the sentences that you would not have read correctly or not have gotten the meaning correctly. Let them think you're in this together. Let them think that you're learning as you go and how cool things are. I'm coming down here. I want to read about these snot houses.
The snot houses can reach more than 3 feet wide.
That's like a person building a 5-story house every day or so. Ugh. That's interesting, isn't it? You can see that there's mucus and complex and all of those pieces that we talked about when it talks about using text. So just remember, adults are not going to read the whole text. They're going to scan unless you make them read it. They're going to skim and scan. They're always going to look at the sidebars first. They're going to look for links. They're going to look for things that will read aloud to them. and they're going to look for video links that can help them out. So it kind of gives you an idea how to use digital text with adults. But even though you've read the text now, that doesn't mean they own it. That doesn't mean that anything has moved into long-term memory. It doesn't mean I can take it out of long-term memory and use it to apply, because that's where the active part comes in. So once we have these pieces and we've looked at that text, we still have another job to do. Oh, we talked about that one already. I'm going to go ahead. There are lots of other sources that you can use for online text. Math is Fun is a great one. Reading A to Z is a great one. Khan Academy is a great one. But the one that I showed you today is News for You, and it's from New Readers Press. It's a fabulous subscription. It's not very expensive. A lot of students can use it. It can be used individually. I use it on my Zoom meetings when I'm meeting with my adults through Zoom. We use all of those pieces together. So online News for You at New Readers Press, and I'll get you that at the end of the presentation as well. If we have to move that knowledge, that information that we just got from digital text into long-term memory, we have to do something else with it. And that's where blended learning comes in. This is a piece written by David Rosen and Jan Vanek, the what, why, how, and who of blended learning for adult basic skills learners. It's a really good article too, and I'll make sure you get that reference. They combine digital learning, in-person conversations, and application of learning into a very interesting and not new but innovative way of teaching. We flip the steps in teaching when we use blended learning. Students learn from the input at home on their computer. They have one-on-one time spent with a teacher. That's for questions and samples. And the application is a real life situation that they work on in a small group. So if you are working with your adults and you're doing it all through Zoom because they're at home and you're at your office, then I make sure they have the input that they can read before they come to me. They come to me then for their one-on-one session once a week. And during that session, we look through Zoom at some examples and I answer questions for them. And we just kind of make sure they know what they're doing. And then they have a small group of 2 or 3 that they meet with at another time during the week. And there is another PowerPoint that I've created and send to them that gives them things for them to do as their group before they come back to their one-on-one meeting. And that's really blended learning in a nutshell. We're going to look at algebra is fun, expressions, terms, variables, and coefficients today to practice a blended learning lesson. Okay? Remember, it's a little different than traditional. Traditionally, the teacher gave the input. The teacher did guided practice with the student. They did their independent practice alone and their application alone. In blended learning, the input is on the computer before they arrive. Guided practice is with the teacher. Independent practice is individual, and application is in a small group. In order to prepare that input, I create a PowerPoint. It's short, detailed, with lots of examples. If under the slideshow portion, not the just record audio, but under slideshow, you can record audio, and you can record audio over that slideshow so your students have a chance to hear and see from you the input you want them to have. A lot of times, if you can use good animation, it makes a difference. That will highlight each step and show people what they do. Remember to slow down. And I always have to put this in here because I have to remember to slow down a lot of times. Students will watch this video before your one-on-one session. And I'm going to give you an example, just a 2 or 3 minute example of a input lesson that I would send home. Here's algebra is fun. Welcome to Algebra is Fun with Dr. Carroll. Today we're going to talk about variables, coefficients, expressions, and equations. Here's some words you'll need to know. An expression is a group of numbers and letters in an algebraic sentence with no equal sign. A variable is a letter in an expression that can be replaced by any number. A coefficient are numbers in the expression, and a term is a set of variables and coefficients using only multiplication and division. So in this expression, 4a, 4 is the coefficient and a is the variable. When there's no space between the 4 and the a, that means they're being multiplied together. So 4a is the same thing as 4 with a in parentheses, or 4 asterisk a. 6 QRS, 6 is the coefficient, QRS is the variable. And QRS can be written as 6 QRS, or 6 with QR and S in parentheses, or 6 times Q times R times S. Sometimes rather than the times sign, you'll see the asterisk, but most often you'll see just the letters 6 Q R S. Let's try to evaluate that expression. Let's evaluate the expression 4a if a is equal to 5. So 4a is my original expression. I substitute in 5 for the variable a, so I get 4 times 5 in parentheses, and 4 times 5 is 20. Remember, there's no space between the 4 and a, we multiply. And remember, when we substitute that a in, it must be in parentheses, has an asterisk, or a multiplication sign beside it, so you know what we're doing here. Let's evaluate this expression. If Q is 2, R is 3, and S is 4. 6 QRS becomes 6 times 2 times 3 times 4, which becomes 6 times 24, which becomes 144. Look at how your numbers come up and down like a ladder, like a ice cream cone. It starts with larger and gets smaller as we work down. It's a V. Evaluate this expression if A is equal to 24. 4 divided by A equals 24. So 4 divided by 24, when we substitute in the number for the variable A, and 4 divided by 24 is 6. Let's look at one more thing. Let's look at how many terms are in an expression. 4x plus 2, how many terms? Of course, there's 2 terms. How many coefficients? 2. How many variables? 1. Good job. Look at this one. 4xy plus 3x plus 7. How many terms? Of course, there's 3. How many coefficients? 3. How many variables? 3. What about this one? 4ACD plus 7AC plus B divided by 5. How many terms are there? 4 terms. How many coefficients are there? 3 that you see, and the 1 in front of the D is implied. But there are 3 seen coefficients. And how many variables? 6. You're right. Thanks for looking at this first lesson with me. This is Dr. Carroll. This way of the fun, our one-on-one meeting will be coming up soon. So that's just an example of an input that we use to send home with our student before they're ready to move on. Okay. We're going to get this going right here. We're in business now. Okay. Then when students arrive for their one-on-one session, we use online learning from New Readers Press. Online learning is an online program that allows us to choose a lesson, get some input, practice some lessons, give some practice tests, have some flashcards. It's a wonderful active process. But this is the one we use when we are in our one-on-one session. Now they came to me with that knowledge, and now they're sitting with me either side by side or in a Zoom lesson, and we use the online learning process. Takes a minute to load it up here. Online learning is from New Readers Press as well. It's a really good program that schools use as a whole, individuals use, or literacy councils or other groups that are teaching adults use. It's trying to come on here. Got to log in. It not only, if you are working with literacy group, it not only gives the students what they need, but it helps you as a tutor track those students. Helps you as a tutor track those students. So you can set up your classes. With those classes set up, you can find out how many minutes they're on, how many days they've been on, when they were on last. That's not too hard. That's not too hard. Let's see why it's not letting me. It's trying. It's working around. Logging in. You can also check if you have lots of tutors on your list. You can also check your tutors and see how often they're on with each student and where that's going. It's really an all-in-one program that I would certainly recommend. Okay, we're getting on here. I've got to log into my account because nobody can get into your account, so they can't get into my account. So students don't have to worry about anybody looking at what they're doing. It is a lot of data, so it takes it a minute to log in. I hope that you're all having a nice cooler day than I'm having. Very, very warm here today. Oh no, don't say it can't be reached. All right, we go here. Try again. Technology is a wonderful thing, isn't it? We're all learning to do more with technology than we ever thought we would this year. It's trying. We'll look at a couple lessons on expressions and equations again, so you kind of see how that all works together. We may go on and come back to this in just a minute. If it doesn't go this time, we will go on and come back to this. I think it's loading this time. And what kind of things you're using as well, because one of the best things about learning is we share so much digitally with each other. All right, well, I'm going to minimize this and let it work a little while. We'll come back to that in just a minute. It's certainly circling, but oh. Those are all the classes that we have on our website. We have 48 tutors and about 68 students that are working online since the started and we went to all online learning. Right. So one of the things we are hoping to do this spring is to provide some hotspots and tablets to some of our students. All right, here it is. This is the online learning page that shows all of my classes. I can look at all of my students, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to go over here and look at my students, and we'll go to a student that we use for these demonstrations. So you can see I have these classes and how many students each person has, and how many of those students are actually active. So I can see here that Corrine only has 6 of her 10 students are active. So it's time for me to call and find out what's going on if they're not active. One of the nice things about this program is when we get to this student, I can impersonate her. So I can go in and share the screen. So we're both looking, we're on the other side of the computer screen. I'm looking at her on Zoom. So it's almost like we're sitting side by side. There's a lot of students studying today. When there are the more students that are on for literacy, the longer to the student right here. And so I just click her name. Now I have to wait for it to load again. But we're going to impersonate her and look exactly what she's doing today and look at a couple lessons on her website. So I'm always glad when it takes so long because oh, she's coming. Another thing that I can do with online lessons, I can tell people exactly what methods, sections they should study. They take a pre-test, it's scored. I can go through and choose just the lessons I want. We can take a post-test. We can reset those things they missed and go over that with them. I can do all of those pieces. All right, it says my internet's a little unstable, but we'll be all right here. So I'm sure I want to be logged in as Riley. We live in the country in the Ozarks, and so it sometimes says we're unstable, but we never are, so. Some people may think hillbillies are unsteady anyway. Okay, but you can see, other than it being a little slow, how easy it is to use. Just one click and you're on to the next thing. Online learning is from New Readers Press again, and we bought a subscription with 20 seats in it. And so that means any 20 of our 60 students can be online at any given time, could be online at any given time, because that's the number of seats that we purchase. And you can purchase a variety of number of seats. 10 is the smallest and larger, so it's really an easy. I'm sorry it's taken so long here. Usually it doesn't take so long, but we are almost there. I find that when I am teaching adults on the computer, that this part where it takes time for the computer to run is as valuable as if everything works perfect for me every time. Because then they realize when they're at home, I know I'm already logged in, thank you very much. Okay, and they get to a snag point, they just don't start clicking, trying to get on through it. They just wait patiently for that to happen, and it comes through from there. I'm now impersonating Riley. So many programs that you have do not allow you to see the same screen at the same time. And that's so important, because otherwise students can't see that you're working together. You're always having to talk to each other. I watched a young lady who was trying to hold a piece of paper up to her camera every time to show the steps in the math problem. That's much harder to do it that way. It allows you to meet those goals and allows you to follow up on those goals with them. I can send them messages. I can send them emails through online learning. They can highlight text. They can circle and draw on text. They can bookmark text so they come back to it. And all of those things are the things that make online learning an active presentation. Loading taking too long? Yes, loading is taking too long. Click here. There it is. Wait for it to get light enough that we can see it here. Okay, this is Riley's page, and it will get lighter as we go. It says up here at the top that Riley's working on language arts. Say we were working on language arts. There was a box there that she had how many days to her first goal. She wants to take her first test. I don't remember how many days are like. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to go back to this PowerPoint, and if I can get somebody here in my office to get that look up from there. Online learning at New Readers Press, and it does work, and it does work fabulously. So please don't take that idea that internet was slow today to be the fact that it doesn't work, it's not a great program, because it is. Somebody will get it loaded up for me here and we'll be in business. After that one-on-one lesson with the student that you were used online learning, then the student is asked to complete some practice problems. Now notice that careful word. We don't say homework when we're talking with adults. Homework has a terrible connotation with adults. So please use that word, practice problems. For those practice problems, we rely heavily on Breakthrough to Math. It's a New Readers Press item as well. For this particular one, I could assign Level 3, Book 2, Lessons 3 and 4. And that would be about variables, coefficients, expressions, and equations. So then they've got some practice problems to work with. And we've made that digital learning more active. They learned at home, they practiced with you online, and then they went to paper and pencil and did some practice sessions. After that, and they've practiced those and they know how to do those, we have to move that learning into long-term memory. And we know that long-term memory requires application. For us to own that and be able to use it and remember how to use it, we have to apply it. I remember a story about a young man who was trying to learn about the Pythagorean theorem. And triangles and a squared plus b squared equals c squared was so hard and he just didn't get it and he couldn't figure it out. And I tried and tried and tried to think, and we talked about, and we finally settled on the fact that, oh my heavens, he's a carpenter. Let's build rafters on a roof. And he knew exactly how to do it when we got to rafters on the roof. That went back to applying the knowledge he already had and helped us to link that connection, and then we were able to apply that. Small groups have already been assigned, so 2 or 3 students, and those 2 or 3 students are going to get 3 problems or 3 expressions that they're going to evaluate for me. I try and make my groups heterogeneous. I want them to be kind of like learners, so they become friends and they model after each other and they call each other sometimes even outside the Zoom. I want them to be evenly leveled because I don't want one person to do all the work. I worked with Spencer Kagan and did a lot of cooperative learning in my life, and I know that he wanted his groups to be very level. They didn't want them all to be on the same level. But when you're working with adults, you want them to be evenly leveled so they all feel like they have worth before they ever start and that they have something to give to the process. Remember, so many of these adults have not found the process fun or equitable. So we have to be very careful to protect them. Make the PowerPoint for that group meeting, record and save as before, create the Zoom meeting for the group, make it a recurring one so every Tuesday at 2 o'clock their group meets, host the meeting, get them started, share the screen, and then leave the meeting. Let them do their own thing, talk about it, argue about it, figure it out. It's their meeting after you get them started. When they finish that meeting, they're to bring the results to you. Here is an example of the group lesson that goes with that lesson that we learned earlier. Welcome back to Algebra is Fun with Dr. Carol. Today's group activity goes with lesson 1. We're going to talk about variable equations. Now you know all these words. An equation is a term or set of terms with an equal sign. An expression is a set of terms or terms without an equal sign. Inverse means the opposite of, so the opposite of addition is subtraction. The opposite of multiplication is division. The opposite of a square is a square root. Operations are those functions of an equation or expression. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Numerator is the top number of fractions. Denominator is the bottom number of a fraction. All a fraction really is saying numerator divided by denominator. A variable is a letter in a term or expression. Coefficient are the numbers in a term or expression. And a term is a group of variables and coefficients that are only operation is multiplication. In this activity, I want the 3 of you in this group to solve the next 3 equations. I not only want you to solve them, but I want you to prove them. So when you say 3 times x plus 2 is the same as 3x plus 6, I want you to tell me that you use that property that allows you to do that. I just want you to prove why are you doing it. So each member must offer 1 step only. So I do step 1, which is write down the equation and replace the variables. Let's give it. Then I want you to write down substitution. That's what I did. If the next step is a step where you're going to multiply 2 numbers together, it's multiplication. In this order of operations, I want you to use that for proof. Why did you do what you did? But each member only gets to do 1 step. And then member number 2 does the next step. And member 3 does the next step. It's easiest for you to do. Just make sure that everybody's on mute, except for the one person talking, until it gets to be their turn. And they change the mute around. It's called a round robin activity, and I want you to complete all the steps and all the proofs. Make sure that every member of your team could answer all of these examples for their tutoring. Okay, here's our example. Solve for 6 QRS. If Q is equal to 2, R is equal to 3, and S is equal to 4. So 6 times Q times R times S. If I substitute in my numbers for my variables, I get 6 times 2 times 3 times 4. If I multiply QRS, I get 24. So 6 times 24. And the proof of that is just multiplication. And 6 times 24 is 144. Make sure that your work looks like a ice cream cone, or a V, or a ladder moving down the line, so you can see that your equation gets smaller each time. Don't forget to show all your work and be able to explain. Let's look at the first equation. 6 times x plus 8 minus 2 times 2x plus 1 divided by 2 equals equation is 6 plus 3 times the quantity of times 7 equals 36. The hint this time is use the distributive property. I'll give you time to write that one down. And the last one,
Dr. Barsby, we can no longer hear that recording.
2
Okay.
minus 2 equals 17.
Okay. Well, you got the idea. We'll just move on. Can you hear me now, sir? Can you hear me now, sir?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, good. All right. Well, and that just went on with the third equation, and that's all there was to the end of that one. So as we wander through that, we had input, the PowerPoint that you made and sent home for them, the one-on-one tutoring, and then the group activity that came afterwards. That blended learning activity was purposeful, combination of all digital learning, one-on-one conversations, and small group applications. It had all 6 tenets of adult learning: prior experience, purposeful, driven, mistakes are good, they were ready to learn, intentional motivation, and must be active. Those things that we could control were controlled. They were able to skim that material and look at it, go back and look at it again. They have those PowerPoints at their disposal for the whole time they're learning. So they can go back to those PowerPoints and look at that and hear your voice and wander through that again and again. They could skim through those PowerPoints and find just the one piece they wanted to look at. There were sidebar bars or those little text boxes that gave them watch for the negatives and use distributive property. There were no highlighted links in those PowerPoints, but there were in other places. There were no video links, but there were in other places. And they could have it read to them, but it was actually narrated. If they wanted to just have read what was on the screen, that was set up that way too. So they could get the learning both ways. So when we talk about adult learning digitally, we're not talking that much different, but we are having to work harder to make it active. We're having to work a little harder to get that input before they come to us. Those of you that were teachers in the past and have taught in the past know it's really hard to do. It was really hard to get folks to read the history chapter before they came to class. So teachers ended up just telling them what was in the reading, and then why read it? Because the students knew they were going to tell you what was in it. But in this type of blending learning with adults, they're ready to learn. They have to take that initiative to look at that PowerPoint first, to know those pieces, to bring the last group activity with them to class completed. And if you expect that of an adult, you will get that of an adult 90% of the time. All of those pieces are built into the blended learning activity. And when I match it with News Online, online learning, Breakthrough to Math, or even Challenges. Challenges is a great set of books that you can use if you're teaching reading in adult literacy for that individual learning part. There are small reading texts in that, along with questions and answers and applications. Let's take just 1 second and see if I can go back and show you that online learning. They may have it set up now. And if they do, we will look at it real quickly. And no, it doesn't look like they do. Okay. Yep, right there. Yay. Here we are. Let's back up a minute. We have a few minutes to go back and look at this, don't we, sir?
Yes, yes, you still have some time.
All right. So we're going to look at Riley Mings here. This is that online learning from New Readers Press. This is what I'm going to do with him in the one-on-one lesson. You can see that Riley has 38 days until she wants to meet her goal.
of taking this language arts test. You can see that she can look at all her lessons that she needs to study. There's always a getting started lesson that tells them how to use the program. You can look at what particular activities she wants to learn. She wanted to learn about personification, if she wanted to learn about rhyme and rhythm and symbols and poetry, or if she wanted to take them all one-on-one. You can see down here that she's got a test she can take. So she can take a test on each, a pre-test. She can take a test on each unit. She can take a post-test, okay? You can see that this young lady got a 67 on her language overall pre-test. We ask them to get a 70 or if they're not going to take the rest of the lessons. Because she got a 67, she's going to go through and complete each of the lessons in this particular activity. So we'll kind of play from there. We can go back up here to the user portal, and I can see all the class that she's assigned to her. So she may have pre-HiSET learning, which is 7th and 8th grade learning, and then HiSET classes, which is preparation for the HiSET or the old GED. In Missouri, we use the HiSET test now. Some other states are still using the GED, but they're synonymous terms, really. See if it's going to let me go there. Yep, here it goes. We're going to choose the math. We're going to choose the GED, the HiSET preparation math class, and look at that lesson on it in expressions, so you can kind of see what it looks like. So I'm going to go down here to these blue ones, and I'm going to choose HiSET math. Going to load up my course data, and then I'm just going to go to that course. So she can toggle back and go between all the courses that are assigned to her. She's been in science and social studies and language arts, but we're going to go to this math class. She's not done anything in math yet. When my folks are working on their HiSET degrees, I always get them to do language arts, science, and social studies first, and then we go back and tackle writing and math last. Builds a lot of self-esteem when they can pass that math test and move on from there. Just going to load up this class for me. There are probably 8 units in the math class and 8 or 10 lessons in each unit. So there's a lot to learn, and it's broken up small enough that adults can learn from that. So it's probably, and I've used the online programs, and it's probably my favorite just because it breaks it up so small and does it in a way that adults can really learn from it. It's trying to get there. They really give me, yes, they really give me a lot of information on how to share with my students, how my students share with me. Lots of dialogue that can happen even when you're not online. Okay, it says up here, you can see it says she has unsynced course activity. So she's done some things at home that she hasn't sent on to me, hasn't synced it so we can all see it. Okay, so now we're in math. So I'm going to look up lessons in math. And I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to find the one on, let's do one-step one-step equations. Let's do distributive property this time. Okay, that's how we use distributive property in the lessons that we were learning today. And so it shows me here the definition of distributive property. And if I think that's an important thing for me to remember, I'm going to highlight that, because I can choose at some point in time that I just want to find, I want you to show me all the sentences I highlighted, and it'll do that for you. It gives you 2 examples down here. I can show those examples or I can put them away. Here's how some of those work, so you can see how some more examples work. There's a skills tip on most of them. It says parentheses is an expression or an equation. Provide a clue to check whether distributive property needs to be used to simplify the problem. There are practice questions over here that she can do and figure out. This particular one I know is on almost all the sample HiSET tests. It's this exact problem. If I were going to use the distributive property to do 76 times 4, that means I have to distribute that 4 to the 70 and to the 6. So 4 times 70 plus 6 is equal to 4 times 70 plus 4 times 6. So our answer is D. And we confirm it and we choose. Hooray, we got it right, and we all cheer. It seems kind of silly, but we do. And we can go on and continue and work on those practice problems, and there are several of them there. I can also go back up here to the top, and I can do flashcards. So I can make this learning more active by using some flashcards. I'm going to filter these flashcards under high school math, and I'm only going to choose those from lesson 3 or unit 3, lesson 1, evaluating expressions. So let's look at the flashcard words that it's going to give her for that particular lesson. Algebraic expression. We used that word in our definition, didn't we? Click on the flashcard. There's the definition. Student choose, did I get it right? Did I get it partly right, or did I not get it right at all? And that's important because later on she can say, show me the flashcards of all the words I missed. Show me the flashcards of all the words I only partly knew. And the computer will do that for her, and she's just going to look at just those pieces. So she can get them in lots of different ways. We can go on to, oh, we got to go back over here. We can go on to the next one is equation. And an equation was a number sentence or that has variables and constants or coefficients with an equal sign. We can go up here and play games. And they're not games like your kids would like to play, but they're really good games for finding activities. We're going to do 2 steps in this one. We'll just play 2 rounds. So get ready. The instruction says it's going to show you a lot of flashcards, and you got to pick the 2 that match very quickly, and it goes away really quickly. So look at them and see if you can decide really quickly. These are language ones. If we're right, I chose scatter plot and that definition. Oh, doesn't tell me till I get to the end. Okay, look at another one, a fraction with variables, a constant number times each data, supplementary angles, frequency, linear, a fraction with variables in the numerator and or denominator. A constant, the number of times each data types occurs. Supplementary angles, the number of times each data type occurs. Choose those 2. And 2 little green arrows. Did you see we got them right? So you can kind of play it. And we giggle and play and wander through those and laugh and see who can get them faster. And students like that a lot. If I go back here to my lessons at the top, I can choose the different courses I have available to me here and see how I've done on each of those courses. Once she takes a test, I can go in with her and look at the answers to that test and see exactly how she did and talk about the ones that she didn't get correct. But I would highly recommend that you take time to look at an online learning. There are some, I believe there probably are still some free complimentary short periods of time when you can experiment with it and play with it. I would certainly recommend that you do that. Some free trial times and really play with those things. I'm sorry that online learning got out of line, but it works really well. Remember, we're going to first send that input home on the wet matter of a PowerPoint. Second, we're going to do the online learning one-on-one with a student, either in person or by Zoom. Third, we're going to send that independent practice home in some kind of set of problems. And we use Breakthrough to Math if it's a math problem, Challenger if it's writing or reading. And then we go back to a group PowerPoint that I create that gets them to apply those lessons to other expressions, equations, and then eventually to lots of word problems, because we know that most of our folks are working on their HiSET-test and they're doing word problems. I had a wonderful time. I hope you did as well. Do we have time for any questions today, sir, or not really?
Well, I think we're out of time, Dr. Carroll, but I appreciate your time. And we had some technical issues, and it seems like wherever you are, things got better later. And, you know, when your online learning was working better, your audio was better and everything was better. So maybe there were just some internet problems earlier, but I did get it all recorded, and I was able to hear everything. So everyone on the call will end up getting a follow-up email, and the recording will be sent, and a copy of your slides will be sent along with that. So thank you all, and thank you, Dr. Carroll.
You're welcome. Thank you.